Back in late 2014, I had moved into this area at Chowan Creek, and Alan Hamer was staying there as well. And during the course of conversations with him, he brought out several documents, real, hard evidence, actual documents. And it was to do with his car parking in WA, trust funds that had been set up, Clive Stokes, and how his family had taken all his money and declared him pretty much insane, and he's been running from the mental health officers ever since. Now, this is what he says is his story behind all these documents that he would bring out. Now, at the time, I went onto the computer, went online, and I did very basic things to begin with. I did an ATSIC search to see if even the companies that he was talking about even existed. Well, the thing was that there was a lot of validity in the documents that he provided and in the existence of everything in those documents. The only question was this his story or just his version of it? You know, did his family declare him insane to take his money? Or was he actually not, did they notice a change in him that he became mentally unstable and thereby, in their perception, unable to take control of his own affairs, so they took charge of it. He objects to it, as many people would, because one of the first signs I think I've been told of insanity is to actually claim that you're not. Well, I have to tell you right now, if that's all it takes, I'm insane. So thereby that I can say that, I'm not insane, because I can recognise that we all have our insane moments. It's a little bit different to constant and erratic behaviour that leads people to worry about the people that they care about. So the documents that Alan Hamer showed me and I checked into, yes, if you go on his story, it is not a very nice thing that's been done to him. But as I explained to him, that pretty much there's not much he can do about it. That if you've been put into that position, making all the claims that he does, you can't fight against being outnumbered by your family. I mean, if his family actually got him declared mentally incapable so they could take power of attorney and control over his affairs, then this has been done legally and with the justifications of strict requirements and the consensus of several family members that are agreeing that he's not dealing with stuff like he used to. And then you look at a lot of the other things that he brings in. He's got a history in the military. Now, I've already said about that morning on the porch or on the veranda with Alan Hamer and what he told me, that he is an infiltrator. He goes around all the different communities. There's lots of them that actually do it. And they spend really no more than 2 years in an area. They go in, see what they can find out, pass on that information, and he talked to me about having his handler come pick him up because he needed to go back in for retraining. And there were so many things that by 2014, there are already a certain number of rabbit holes I've gone into and realize that, all right, there may be the existence of certain things in the world, but you know what? That seems to be all out there in America or overseas, and it doesn't seem to be anything that is affecting me directly. So I can't see where it manifests physically. But after I met Alan Hamer, that really changed my perception, because to have an ideal of how far you think things are infiltrated into our society, you know, to have a real life experience that it's no longer an ideal, but it's real, it's in your face, and it's actually challenging your belief, which it did mine. You know, I really wanted to believe that Alan Hamer, what he told me that day, was just another crazy story. But I know it wasn't. There was just too much of what he said in there that it made sense of so many different things. Because before he finally left where I was, and I lost my birth certificate, my marriage certificate, and all these other identifying documents, which he has a habit of doing, he spent a few weeks where he was not there as much, where he is going round to another community and making himself known there. So he's establishing somewhere else before he goes. But before he would go into that community full time, he knew that he needed to go back in for retraining. And, you know, at the time you say, well, what retraining? I mean, he's in the military. You think that he's been retrained in what? Military tactics or what? No. What I believe I encountered, and, you know, this is my truth, the way I perceive it, is that Alan Hamer is an MK Ultra. He's running programs. He's been one of the originals in probably been doing it for decades before they perfected certain techniques. And the programming glitches, breaks down, so they have to go back in to get retrained, as he calls it, but to pretty much be reprogrammed with the personality. And this is where he also exhibits this in what people classify as mental health issues, is that he can be talking about one thing, like I have seen in the last 6 years since I first encountered Alan Hamer, for him to represent different things and focus on different things. It's almost like he had a glitch in his programming, went back in for retraining, and when he came out, his focus was different. And so the people that he was around also experienced that difference in him. But ultimately, it's one of those things that actually challenged me. You know, here is someone in my face that has clearly got, you know, lots of things going on inside their head, and it's really hard to know what's what. But, you know, there are certain things that you cannot deny. Like, there were even little frustrations that happened in that community that people didn't know why things would break down. Certain things may go missing. And Alan was always sort of around the corner. He was like, you know, a lot of the time very silent. He'd just be sitting there or just round the corner, not far away. And he did mention people that I'd actually met too that were also supposed to be infiltrators or whatever you want to call them, like him. Frank, that I met, plays banjo, fairly big guy, had been squatting in the national parks for, at that time, he'd have been there for about 6 years. And what he would do is go around all the different communities. When Frank would show up, he'd bring food. And it was interesting, actually, that Max Egan said somebody bought him food before he had his episode. I wonder if someone like Frank came and visited you before you had your little beam of light experience and your apparent whatever. Seriously, I'm not even going to get into that one. So in meeting Alan Hamer, seeing the paperwork that he presented, the personality changes that he had, and clearly the difficulties he has in communicating with people on, everybody else's level that they can understand. And one of the reasons why I did this video here was not because he frustrates me. I don't actually pay him any mind because I've been there, done that. But I've seen the amount of comments that he's left and the amount of people that he's frustrating because he's doing to them what he does to everybody. He gives you this little snippet and makes out it's really important but won't even tell you why. And it just creates this big distraction, this big conversation. Now, ultimately, I would say that if Alan Hamer did give up the documents that he's got, in there you'd find my birth certificate, my marriage certificate, and all these other documents, my references, my job references, everything that would identify me as me, that I carried with me, he stole, he took. And it was only after he left that they went missing. No one else had touched them. And I knew he had taken them because he was always sneaking around. There was a couple of times, as I said, that we were sharing the space in the garage, unfortunately. And I'd walk back out into the garage, he's in there and he's going through our stuff. There's no surprise about who's going through your stuff when you catch them red-handed. So, and I'm not the only one. My story is 100 people's story, probably even 1,000 over the years by the number of places that Alan Hamer has been to. Now, the things that he does give out as information, if you imagine that they are snippets from all these different personalities, but every time you ask him to explain more, wow, you get nothing, all right? With Alan Hamer, you get what you get, and you're not going to get any of it explained in any context whatsoever. And even after this video that I did, he did make the comments, you've slandered me, come talk to me. It's like, mate, I told you to come talk to me. We're going to do this circle around again, aren't we? It's going to go nowhere because, he's slandered and he'll take this oath and he'll swear this and he'll swear that. People that start off by saying that, prefacing everything with, well, I'm telling you the truth, and I'm telling you the truth because it's valid because, and, all of this. I mean, it's like, can you just spit it out? No. They're going to make all this justification on why what they're saying is the truth. That's the comment, and leave it at that. And then you go, yeah, but you never actually said anything. You just said you're telling the truth. You're telling the truth about what? So, out of, trying to help other people not go through that same frustration and realise that you go round in circles and get nowhere, you will always find grains of truth. Always. But you're also going to get pushed down so many rabbit holes that will lead nowhere. And the thing being too is that things that have happened in the past, they have occurred. You cannot change them. And some things, no matter how hard you try, you're not even going to be able to prove that that was the way. There are millions and millions of people in this world that know exactly what I'm talking about. That there has been a wrong done. It's past. All you can do is accept it. You can't change it. And even if you tried fighting it, it's not going to matter because you can't prove it. And you see, the snippets that Alan Hamer has are snippets. What he has can't prove anything other than the fact that everywhere he goes, he is taking people's identity documents and other documents and communications that he may find. Like, I wouldn't know how many other documents he actually took from the boys in the main house, that he would have been snooping in their rooms and taking documents of theirs when he left as well. So, and people will go looking for these things and go, where the hell is that? And a lot of them will never even piece it together that that document that you thought you lost, no, you didn't lose that document or all those other documents. Alan Hamer relieved you of them. He passes it on to his handler, probably keeps a copy himself, gets retrained, comes out with basically the same story, but there's always a little bit of a variation in the way he talks about things. Like he was the Black King years ago. People have said that they can't find any evidence today that he's made any tribal claims. Well, I assure you, he actually claimed, and not only to my face, but I've seen it in videos that he had done, but I can't find those at the moment, where he was the Black King. Because of his ancient DNA and because of his rights, he was the Black King, the leader of the tribes. Noddy. This is where all part of Noddy came into it. How? I have no idea. Because the only thing I know about Noddy is some, kiddie show. So part of that story about the Black King and being the ancient chosen DNA and of the Hamer tribes and being the Black King because of it and everything was to virtually say that, as even claimed through the right of the Hamer tribe of the Christian religion, of Ham, one of the 12 tribes, he is Hamer of Ham. He's a Ham in the Bible. So he's of the 12 tribes of Israel, or Judea, whichever you want to look at it. And he's also carrying the DNA lineage of the tribes in Aboriginal Australia. That is the answer to them. He is the Black King, This is his story. I don't make this stuff up. This is his stuff, as best that you can understand it. And then, as he has moved into a different community, he's got a different thing, and he comes out with, using different names. He's not the Black King anymore. He's not Noddy. He's using other names. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's at least 3 or 4 different changes that I can see in the last 6 years since I've known him. So he has most definitely made claims to be DNA connected to the tribes, and through that, not only connected to the tribes of Israel, but to the tribes of Australia, and he is the true king. So, you hear all these things, and then you think, well, you'd be crazy to even believe that anything that he said is true. And that what I want to believe about when he said he was going back to meet his handler and go for retraining. And he did shortly leave after that. Now, one of the things I might mention is that in a lot of the videos that you can see of Alan Hamer right now, he calls himself Nighthawk. And there's even ones where he's got this, this mask on with Nighthawk and everything on it. I honestly don't know why he tries to conceal his identity when everybody knows it's him. But he's calling himself Nighthawk now. So that's his code name. But this is a few years after I've met him, and he's got a different name. So I'm reading from notes that I actually made that day after I spoke with Alan Hamer. Alan Hamer called himself the Jester. And Frank that came round that plays the banjo, that been squatting in the national park, he was Frank the Birdman. He did give him some other name, I think, but I couldn't remember. I mean, there was a lot that he came out with. You know, I've only stuck to the... I'm not going to talk about his visions of angels and that he was talking there at one stage. Like, he would switch between stories, like... you know, if you just had a record going and you changed to a completely different record and then went back to the other one and kept going from where it had finished off, it was really hard to piece all the different parts together. But so a lot of what he said, I just didn't take on board. I was only listening to certain things that, well, he spun me out with what he was saying about what he was really doing there. You know, did I believe him or not? Did I want to believe him? I tell you what, I didn't want to believe him. Really still don't want to believe him, because it'd be so much easier to say, you know what, he is crazy. It's all stupid. It doesn't exist. It's not real. But other than Frank the Birdman, there was Chris, which he didn't really say too much about him. And another guy, don't even know if this guy's name is real, Brett McKinley, he was called the Spider. And he was waiting for Paul, who would take him in for 8 weeks training. And Paul was a remote viewer. He was one of these top-notch remote viewers. Now, this is Alan Hamer's story, okay? This is what he told me. And he actually thought that I was his replacement. And he was kind of like giving me an update. I was spun out by it. You know, I wished that I had the secret squirrel recording that day where I could sit back and listen to it all, what he actually did say, and try and make more sense of it. But it's still bits and pieces because he did say so much. And knowing that there's been a grain of truth up until that point in all the things that he have said, because I have seen the paperwork, you know, there is that validity to the things that he's saying in so many respects. But then there's this other side where it's like, well, yeah. Now, it was telling me that Paul, his trainer, the really good remote viewer, he's the one that does the 8 weeks training. And he taught him everything he knows. Before he came here, well, where we were at the time, and when he goes back to get retrained. So, you know, like on to the next mission. And he was the one that told me that in the last 20 years, every alternative community in northern New South Wales has been infiltrated by either him or one of the others that he's mentioned, or others that are also part of it all, that he knows are out there, but he doesn't know their names of. He just knows that all the communities are infiltrated by, well, controlled opposition to spy on you, to find out who you are. And I've already done previous videos of, you know, what activities do you actually have to be participating in before they will actually, you know, the government or intelligence, whatever, want to actually monitor what you're doing. Send someone in to actually find out. Because you know what? The only way to find out is to be an insider. You can't find out, like, even people in the OSTF can't find anything out from being on the inside. It's like there's this vault of closely guarded information that nobody can know anything, even, you know, the peripheral members of OSTF. So, just to intervene on a different subject but the same one, in some ways that people have been thinking that, all right, Jenny Lunig, sorry if I didn't say your last name, Jenny, People have been accusing her and giving her a hard time because they think she's mean. There is now someone else that's come to my attention, Tony Branton, I think it is, that now she's getting attacked because people think I'm her. Well, I'm not. I'm Kerry, okay? I'm me. I'll show you where me is in a little bit further. But I've told everybody I'm in Tassie. I was born and bred here. I left, decades ago, lived and worked and travelled, raised my family up on the mainland, only came back in the last few years. So, yeah, back in Tassie after experiencing a very big world in Australia out there. Lots of differences. I mean, everywhere you go in Australia, there is something unique and different to experience there. And even when you think things are the same, you'll find that just the way that group of people look at something there is a little bit different. Like you go over to Western Australia, that Western Australia gets left out of things so often. So much is focused on the east coast of Australia. But when you live over in Western Australia, you realise just how much the division between the east and the west is. Not only in time difference, but in that the focus in both places, they really don't know what's going on in each place. The WA doesn't know really what's going on the east coast because it doesn't really affect them too much, and vice versa. So everywhere you go, you see things from a different perspective. And whether you agree with those perspectives or not, it's just something that you notice. And it's like, yeah, that's the way they do it. Anyway, off subject when I was saying about the people that I'm not. Because seriously, I'm Kerry, okay? I live in Tassie. I am not other people. I'm me, just Kerry. Always have been. And the thing being too that most of the time when I do start up a conversation, one of the first things you don't come out with is, oh, hi, I'm Kerry. And, most of the time when you are introducing yourself to people, there are plenty of friends that I've had over the years that I've known them so well, but if you asked me what their last name was, I wouldn't have a clue. Because it didn't matter to me what their last name was, And so when they say, oh, well, so-and-so who, it's like, yeah, wow, I knew them really well, but I couldn't tell you because I didn't need to know their last name. It was of no importance to know their last name. So, yeah, people just introduce themselves as their first name. Unless you're addressing a court or somewhere like that, or you need to identify yourself as the person to governments, then you only really ever introduce yourself as your first name. So I've always been just Kerry, just me. Only you, Kerry, is a saying I've heard a lot. And that's why, well, who would have thought that all these years ago when I went through these experiences, at the time, it was shit. The things that went on there and the disappointments and the disillusionment that you get in that these things just aren't working. People have all these ideals, but there's no reality on how to actually achieve it. It's just all talk and no action. But it's made even worse when you have people that are trying to achieve these things. And a lot of these communities in northern New South Wales, in Australia, anywhere in the world that are trying to achieve their piece of harmony and balance. I mean, and do no harm, that's a good thing. But the thing is that when you hold beliefs that are doing others harm, that's when you have got to ask, uh, is holding those beliefs that is causing harm to others a good thing? Well, you can be quiet about it and say, well, one day they'll just disappear. But until they do, all the harm that they cause. Because, yes, everybody that controls the opposition out there, that infiltrates these places, that in one way, shape, or form controls the narrative, they are putting forward a very limited perception, and one that you've just got to ask yourself and keep it real, okay? Keep it real. Is there something that can be actually achieved? Like, there were so many things that Alan Hamer wanted to achieve but could not be realistically achieved. And yet for all these years, he's still tried to pursue something that can't be achieved. I dare say what could be achieved is his ability to produce documents on all the people in the communities where he's been to over the last, well, he's talking about 20 years he's been he knows that the communities have been infiltrated, and after 20 years, every single one of them, even the movement that went on at Bentley, the CSG, the CSG. I was thinking of sugar then, and no, it's coal seam gas, yeah. The big blockade at Bentley, well, that had been infiltrated too. There were infiltrators there, people pretending to be on your side to find out what's going on and report it back to other people. And then you go, well, what's the good of Alan Hamer reporting back anything? Well, the thing is that what he reports back, those snippets, are what they're after. He brings back identity documents and he'll be asked, well, this person here that you got this off, what do you know about them? And he will tell them. It's that simple. Then he goes back out into the communities and keeps going. He's like a little kleptomaniac with people's personal documentation. He's identifying people. And he's not the only one. And as I said, I'm just going to play you something. Because there's been certain points brought up by people, is that what do you expect an infiltrator is going to look like? Do you think that you're going to spot them? Do you think they're going to come in with a sign on their head? Do you think they're going to be the classic representation of what you see in videos and reported on, and this is how it works? Or could you imagine a more subtle and more devious, that what we see only skims the top? What we see in America as far as what is done in controlling the entertainment industry, the music industry, the movies, the actors, the Scientology, all these things that are controlled within some kind of mechanism that people put lots of different labels on. But we know that they are control mechanisms. And what, you think that they don't exist in Australia? In Australia, we are attached at the hip to the US and the UK, also to New Zealand and Canada, because we are Commonwealth countries. So we have always been the little brother of America. The little bitch that always does what America wants. They look at what they did with Pine Gap. Look at what they did with Gough Whitlam, because he wanted to reveal what's going on at Pine Gap. First Prime Minister to ever get sacked. That's how much they want to keep what's going on, what the Americans are doing at Pine Gap, not for Australian eyes. It's on our own country, and we're not allowed to know what's going on there. and they got a Prime Minister sacked. We know that the CIA involvement in Australia is just as prevalent in Australia as it is in their own country and probably every other damn country. We are part of the Five Eyes Alliance, or as Israel likes to claim, there's 6 eyes, but we don't know they're really the second eye. Well, yeah, I could buy that because, you know, you think that America's got control over the internet. Actually, no. The Israelis actually do. Yeah. So for all that stuff out there that has got a grain of truth, what do you actually think that grain of truth is going to look like if it shows up in your life? What does it look like in reality? I'm just going to play this clip by Olamide. I came across this years ago, and it's one of those videos that's actually, you know, it's pretty powerful as far as, like, when you look at it, not only what he's singing about is powerful, but the way he presents it pretty much says it all. And when you're watching it, don't want you to, but understand that what I see getting done to the cultures in America, I see getting done to the cultures in Australia and in many countries, probably if not all. And one of them that so clearly, you know, ticks all the boxes for that is Billie Eilish. It was like she was groomed for it, you know, overnight success. And it's not a racial training either. When you're watching this, understand that it is across all cultures. You know, white, black, pink, purple, orange. You know, everybody. They have someone to control every culture. Every alternative that is setting up in opposition to the main narrative has also got an infiltrator. Do you think they will do it? Do you think it's worth it? Well, that's for you to decide.
What's that?
But I will play
I
it.
can't talk about that.
Truth is scary.
Àwọn ilé ìjẹyàn, àwọn ìdíyàní. Bó bọ́ ṣe ń bẹ̀rù fún mi bí ẹni pé mi jẹ́ àmì. Party boys ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ bọ́ mi, no dem no fit jẹ́ àmì. Èmi náà mọ̀ pé wọ́n ní fẹ́ ṣòro ìdílé ní Germany. Ilé fọ́ Illuminati. Ilé fọ́ Illuminati. Wow, wow, wow. Allahu Akbar. Gbogbo àwọn táwọn dá rate me now they're hard bow. Ẹ̀yin Shawn Michael, calm down. Want me see show, I get my news all around town. Wọ́n ní mo gentle, but mi ò ṣàìdí. Gentleman on the highway, ògbóǹtarìgì. Ẹ filẹ̀ fún Eriki náà pọ́n bí ògbólógbò tí ó sanwó bí àìs tó big. God don bless me, ẹ ṣàlùbádé. Ìgboro fẹ́ràn mi, ìgboro débi ládé. We run the hood, gbàgbé bó ṣe ṣẹlẹ̀. Wọ́n ti tún ṣe pín iṣẹ́ tí yàtọ̀ sí ti tẹ́lẹ̀. Bàbá no go down, let's tó bá darúgbó. Bàbá got them talking about him in every time I do go. Bàbá came, Bàbá saw, Bàbá conquer, Bàbá did it. Bàbá really doing healing. All the time, Bàbá kill it. Àwọn ilé ìjẹyàn, àwọn ìdíyàní. Bó bọ́ ṣe ń bẹ̀rù fún mi bí ẹni pé mi jẹ́ àmì. Party boys ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ bọ́ mi, no dem no fit jẹ́ àmì. Èmi náà mọ̀ pé wọ́n ní fẹ́ ṣòro ìdílé ní Germany. Ilé fọ́ Illuminati. Ilé fọ́ Illuminati. Ilé fọ́ Illuminati. Ilé fọ́ tó scary. Ilé fọ́ tó bad. Ilé fọ́ tí ó ní bearing. When I first start, they told me go to hell. I don't come back at the heart and I know well. I can't imagine how they gon' feel. They'll be like, see this one where we for dog kill. I'm a self-made. I get my work for every million. Thousands and no dress in my account. That real shit. I'm all about progression. I'm of the whole shit. But let me baba, shall I day lay, yeah. He ain't got so them know they're there, yeah. Oh yeah, go to your holly, how I do my thing. Oh hell, any day you know the way I make up something. Out of nothing, cause I'm the G to the E and I-U-S thing. They wanna test me, but not scary, that sounds so interesting. I will lay jam, I want to tell me. Oh, wash and pay for me, barely pay me, Johnny. Party boys says it, but me know them no fit tell me. And me no more go one infection, deal any jam me. You look for Illuminati. You look for Illuminati. I want to tell me. But wash and pay for me, barely pay me, Johnny. Party boys says it, but me know them no fit tell me. And me no more go one infection, deal any jam me. You look for Illuminati. You look for Illuminati.
You look at Olamide today and, wow, he looks a little bit different than that. But you know, that when you see something like that, when you see the drug inducement, the treatments that they go through, you ask yourself, is it real? Is it possible? Is it really going on? Is it just in America? Is this what it looks like? Or could there be many forms of it? Well, the thing is, this is what goes on behind the scenes that brings out the Olamide that you see today, that is a lot more in control. The way I look at Alan Hamer is that he is likewise treated in the same way. An MK Ultra infiltrator is a victim as well. They are someone that, well, it creates a conflict in yourself. How do you deal with this? Here is a person that you know has been severely abused in more ways than what you could imagine, to create them into something to be controlled by others. I mean, that is just so wrong, and you want to help people like that. But on the other hand, they are so well controlled by those that have turned them into that you're not going to break past that. You can't help them. Like, there are those out there that have said that they have spent years trying to break down the programming. And, we've all heard the stories of the super soldiers coming out and saying they've successfully got past the programming. Well, I actually think that's their programming, to make people think and control the narrative around the super soldiers. Because when they first came out years ago, there was a commonality I noticed amongst all of them. They all were asked particular questions on certain things and would say, I can't tell you that, I'm not allowed to tell you. And it's like, well, if you've broken down the programming, who is stopping you from revealing this? And whose permission do you actually need to be revealing any of this? They all had it come out at one time or another in their interviews that they couldn't reveal certain information because they were not allowed to, because that's not part of the programming. That's not part of controlling the narrative. They only want to control the narrative in certain areas and keep it away from other areas. So they're only going to reveal the direction that they want it to go in. They, them, the elite, whatever, whoever's training them, the almighty, all-known, unnamed they. Yeah. So after I showed you that video on Olamide, I'll leave you a link because I know it's probably out of sync and it's not that enjoyable that way. But after showing you that, and if you know Alan Hamer, you would know that that's how he behaves. Like he's glitching between certain personalities and frames of thought. Like he'll give you one little frame of thought and he can spit that out, but if you ask him anything else about it, he doesn't know what to say. He's not programmed to say anything else about that. So we go on to something else. And that's where, I'm sorry, but either Alan Hamer has taught others to speak like him, or he's using other names as well as Alan Hamer, asking, who am I? Well, who are you? The one that's been leaving comments? You sound so much like Alan Hamer. If you aren't Alan Hamer, you've clearly been through the same kind of programming that he has been. I've got an idea on who his new handler might be because, Paul wasn't a live-in. He needed a live-in handler to keep him more under control. But they can't actually, retire Alan Hamer because he's useful. He still goes round into all the communities and he gathers information. And it doesn't matter what he says publicly because everyone thinks he's crazy and no one believes him. And he comes in, he shows people in real life the documents like he showed me, and you'll think he's got some validity. Well, it's a circle he's been chasing for a long time. And it is a circle. It will go nowhere except back to the same point over and over. It will lead nowhere. Now, I would never have brought any of this up with Alan Hamer. Not even have done the video to ask him, well, dish up or shut up. Unless I actually realised the potential threat he offers to many real people. For all the people that are his supporters now, one day you'll be on the other side of it, trust me. He's already got enough information on you. Or if he hasn't, he'll be your friend until he has. That's his job. He's been doing it for a long, long time. And it causes the conflict too in that he's been doing it for a long, long time. But he also places, when his family took over his, car parking empire and declared him mentally incapable, this is after he's supposedly been infiltrating these communities for years. So that's a little bit of a conflict of information. Or maybe it's not a conflict. Maybe that's actually why they declared him mentally incapable, because he was a no-show most of the time. He was off infiltrating some tribe or some alternate community or something like that, as he was paid to do. And every time he'd come back and call in on the family, he'd be that little bit more out there with all these more crazy stories. Until one day, they finally said, you know what, that's it. We don't want to have to admit this, but, Dad's crazy, or I'm married to a crazy man, or whatever. And they got him declared mentally incapable and took over his affairs. So you can see how that could actually not be a contradiction, but also, they are something that works together. But let's just say that Alan Hamer is someone that you should be very careful about how you deal with him and how much time you actually waste chasing those snippets. That's all he will ever give you. He will never give you anything else. If you ask him for anything else or question him in any way, He'll just do what the OSTF do, and NICAP or Minjin will do. They'll tell you you've got it all wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. They're innocent. Come round there and, yeah, we'll sort it out. Oh, that's actually another interesting point, is that I've seen Mark McMurtry been calling people out and saying to go around and face him. You know, he's been given permission to come round and face their law and be heard by the elders. And I thought, well, mate, aren't you claiming that you've got a Warlpiri skin name and that's the law that you apparently have taken? Wouldn't you go to your country that adopted you and hold, you know, your version of court there? Why would you call them to another tribe's land under their ways when you would not do it by, well, you're using Jacamara as a skin name, that's Warlpiri. Why would you not go to Central Desert and invite those, with the permission of those in Central Desert, for all your accusers falsely accusing you to come onto country and face and bring your proof there? Why are you not doing it where you claim you have your skin name from? It's, yeah, just a question I have. I don't know how the Warlpiri feel. I haven't asked them on that one, but I'm sure they would extend an invitation for you to come back as you have been adopted into the tribe and to take up those accusations, those false accusations from people like me. I would be happy to do that. I would go into country there if I was invited to do so, and to speak, I would do so. But I don't think anyone would be fool enough to go up to 3222 Kyrgyl Road onto your turf so that they could get the shit beaten out of them and have some smart-ass little prick control the whole scenario. You know, nah, not on. You want law? Well then, do it by the law you claim that you have been initiated with, that you were adopted into. On that country where you're connected, supposedly. In Warlpiri country, Central Deserts. I'll actually ask about that one. So you know what? I wouldn't mind flying up there if I could. At the moment, I don't know. Can you fly up to there at the moment with border closures? I don't know. I don't really keep that much up with what goes on in that area. I mean, that's a whole different ball game, isn't it? So yes. Anyway, I just wanted to do this as a follow-up because there are people out there that have clearly got no understanding of what they're dealing with when it comes to who Alan Hamer is. He's in so many ways bipolar. Well, not bipolar literally, in his thinking. You know, one minute he can be going down this track and he gives you information and you say, yeah, now tell me more so I can understand it. And then he'll flip off that onto something completely different, like that doesn't exist at all, he never even said that. And then if you question him about it, it's like, well, I'm honest, I'll swear on a stack of Bibles, you know, I'll take the oath. I mean, seriously, if a person saying something, if their word is not good enough, saying I'm honest and truthful and swearing on a stack of Bibles and all these other ways you want to try and say, if people aren't going to believe you, they're not going to believe you. And that's the thing. There's a certain amount you can believe with Alan Hamer, but there's a certain amount that you've got to really question and wonder about. You know, how deep does MK Ultra go in Australia? Is everything I've said about MK Ultra even something that you could see in your reality, in the people that you have encountered? Do you expect them to show up with a sign, you know, to be as the super soldier represented, that they have certain programs? Did they tell you about all the other different programs that they have running? The ones that they're not allowed to talk about? No, because the ones they're not allowed to talk about are the ones that are subtle. They walk amongst you and you wouldn't know them. And some of them you think, yay, they're crazy, they're harmless. They may introduce themselves through music. Music is a good barrier breaker. In fact, Max Egan is also a classic for that as well. Uses his music. He also uses the peacocks. People use dogs and other animals to break that barrier. Or children. These are all symbols to create a subconscious trust and a way to connect with human beings. Like, you hear someone playing, and he played really well. He finishes his song, you go up and you say, well, man, that sounded really good. Then you have a chat. Naturally, you communicate. If that guy was just walking down the street, he'd be just walking down the street. You wouldn't have had that chat. So it creates that opportunity to talk to other human beings, to have that contact. Likewise, someone's walking their dog. You know, how many people stop and talk to the dog but not the people? Yeah. Anyway, I've yacked on long enough. Just consider the possibility of those that exhibit the signs of mental instability, that may have even done stints in a mental institution and have a history of it. Is that a symptom of what's been done to them? You know, they come out with all these stories and they never really quite make sense because they're not able to tell you the whole story, because the whole story, well, as Olamide says, the truth is scary. And on that note, I'm going to say to you that what you fear is what you manifest. Do not let others take control over what you bring into reality with your own thoughts. And don't be led down all those rabbit holes. I've been down them. Yeah, go a certain way down. Check it out to see if they're valid or not. There's always a grain of truth in them. But the bigger grain of truth that you will find is that rabbit hole is never ending. It's got no conclusion. So what? You know this information now. What purpose does it serve? Is it doing you any good to know it? It's like all things that you know. What good is it if you know it? Well, the only good of knowing something is if it benefits you and all those around you. And that's why I do what I do. You know, I know people are going to give me the shits for this video too. That doesn't matter. Because there are people out there that are going to get what I'm saying and it's going to help them. And they're just going to say, you know what? I'm glad you confirmed for me what I already knew. Not that I told you anything you didn't know, but hearing me say it just, well, it made you get to the stage where, you know what? I'm with you. I'm out of here. I'm not chasing down this wasted effort and distraction anymore. Because there are things, like in this video here that David Cole says, about you have been sent to distract us. Yes, they have. They've been sent to distract us from the things that can bring us together by giving the things that would divide us, to create that opposition, to divide us and our efforts, to get us arguing amongst ourselves who's right and who's wrong. Well, did you ever think that you're never going to prove who's right or wrong? Because, you know, if you look at it from all perspectives, none of you are wrong. You're just looking at it differently. But what is wrong is to fight each other over it. You know, you are allowed to have different perspectives, but you don't have to fight over it. There was other things I was going to introduce in here. Like something about my own Indigenous heritage, I suppose you could say. but I'll save that for another video. And it's not something that I bring up and talk about a lot, because there are enough people that are using cultural heritage and making a claim on it that actually creates the divide. I think Candace Owen said it best, is that those that are talking about how they're being discriminated against because of their race are actually creating the division, an us and them, a victim and perpetrator mentality, where the divide that is created, where, you know, the conquerors that came in have done this to us and now we're going to have to conquer them back, and it's fighting each other. Look, the past is done. What's done is done. You cannot change the past. You have to realize that. The only thing you can change is what you do now and what you decide is going to be the future by your choices. To create division by dividing the races, or coming out in the open as human beings and raising the issues that, well, out here on the public platforms are the only places that people are actually learning a lot of what's going on. There's a lot of false information, yeah. But there's also people that are just looking at what they're looking at, like me, their little bit, and asking the questions that a lot of us should be asking. People are getting hurt. If it was a matter that, if OSTF was doing no harm, I'd let them be. I wouldn't bother, that's their business. But they are doing harm. And it's the people that they're doing harm to that are speaking to me. And Nightcap or Minjimble are doing harm. And Alan Hamer is doing harm, in that he is distracting you from your true path by thinking that he can actually give you any more than what he just put up. He can't. Take Alan Hamer for what he gives you. That's it. Do not try and find out any more. You'll just get told the runaround. That's it. Anyway, yucked on enough. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.